And welcome back to Mixed Media Live. We're here on another Friday evening. Evening for me, I guess it's late afternoon for Ben.
Yep.
But we're here every Friday at 7 p.m. live to do your favorite podcast, obviously. We talk about all things media, or art, I should say, whether it's any type of media like film or TV or whatever it happens to be, or it's music, or it's gaming, 3D modeling, business stuff relating to all those things, philosophy stuff related to all those things. We just like talking about our crafts. We like blending it together. We like bouncing our ideas off each other. We often learn from each other. I've definitely learned a lot, just listening to everyone else speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And today we've got the same thing going on, the same great thing going on. So today we've got two topics. We've got Ben, our resident music composer, talking about umbrellas of I'm going to mispronounce it. What is it?
I think it's Cherbourg.
Okay, there you
roughly. But I was saying earlier to Irving before we started that once I say that I'm going to just call it the film Umbrellas the rest of the show, because I don't know any French and I don't want to get in any deeper trouble with my French, butchering my friend's pronunciation. So
yeah, and I wouldn't be able to tell you one way or another either. So he's going to talk about Umbrellas and its similarities to a movie that a lot of people love, La La Land. And then afterwards, I'm going to talk about inflation, which I've talked about on the show before, but I'm going to be talking about it from a different angle, a little bit more additional information. But of course, none of it is financial advice if you're looking for it. So I am not a professional. But before we go into that, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella.
I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer.
Yeah, and before we jump into the first topic, before we jump into what I was going to say, how was your week?
It's been pretty busy with, a lot of different stuff. It's part of going to school, different assignments, and also, non-music, music assignments, but not like performance stuff and then performance stuff. So it's been a very busy week.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for me, a lot of cleaning house. That's one thing, is a lot of the podcast episodes got edited a lot later than normal. It's because normally I edit a good portion of them, not all of them, on Saturday or something like that. And the Saturday was out at Family Fun Day, which went really well. I talked to a lot of people. A lot of people were really attracted to the 3D printer that was whizzing away at my booth. Definitely got some people to come talk to me, which was really nice. Some prospective projects in the future. Not small projects. I'm trying to get away from those. I probably deny people with small projects. But larger, more visionary type projects, which I'm kind of excited about. So shout out to anyone who was there, who might be listening at Family Fun Day. And that's going to be happening again in the spring, so I'm kind of excited. And yeah, so that's how my week was, kind of catch up.
No, it sounds like a lot of potentially good opportunities there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So yeah, before I pass it off to Ben, I just wanted to say that we at Mixed Media do actually have a Black Friday sale going on, somewhat impromptu. So this is actually going to be from now until next Mixed Media episode, probably. If not, actually just realized next Mixed Media episode is Black Friday. If we end up doing that, we'll have to talk about that later. But if we are here next week, it'll still be. I'm going to say this: from now and then until not this coming Friday, but the following Friday, so 2-week period, our Mixed Media membership is going to be $3 a month instead of $5 a month. So it's quite the big reduction. That's what, like 40% off. That's 40% off. I did math. So that's 40% off. You can actually do an annual membership. I think it's $30 a month if you go annual, $30 a year, which if you go annual. That's, for if you're out there and you're an artist and you want your stuff to get reviewed and you want like good feedback, or if you want access to this whiteboard over here, I mean, I think that's a pretty good deal. $30 for that kind of service, I think, is pretty good. So go to mixedmedia.locals.com. We've got a slow trickle of people just joining the the group. I don't know for what, if they're not supporting, because I don't really post there. So, but what you do get is when you do become a member, is it unlocks this post that gives you access to the live whiteboard, and it also unlocks a whole bunch of other things. When you go there, you'll see essentially how it links you to the different perks that you'll essentially get access to. So with that plug, I'm probably going to be plugging it throughout the night. But with that plug, I'll give it over to Ben.
Okay, so the Umbrellas of Cherbourg, or Umbrellas as I'll call it. So this is a film that I was only familiar with the name because of La La Land. When La La Land came out, what was it, like Christmas 2016, I think?
Sounds about right.
Which even the same like release time as this film, because this is also released at Christmas in 1964. Many parallels, although I don't know that was an intentional parallel. Probably not. But yeah, I remember when La La Land came out. It was kind of a kind of big cultural phenomenon for a little bit, and some people, especially in the musical world, were mentioning it in connection to this film, Umbrellas. So I'd heard of it. I'd heard that it was considered one of the best movie musicals, if not certainly the best foreign movie musical in a lot of people's opinions. And we're going to talk about what that actually means, because there's a difference between an American movie musical and a French movie musical. So I'd heard of it, but the only reason I kind of watched it recently was because Irving was plugging the sale on the Criterion Collection, and I looked at the available films from the Criterion Collection from my school, which is I think 140 films out of like 1,000 that I can watch. But I was really hoping they'd have some of the ones that I actually knew I wanted to watch are not available. No Malik is available. I don't know
for
why.
The price of free though. Well, actually, it's not free because you're paying tuition.
Yeah, the school. I'm paying tuition, and the school is paying something for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they had this film. It's the only shorter film that I had access to that I knew I wanted to watch at some point. So I figured I'd watch it. So I watched this last Friday, right after our last show. And yeah, luckily it's a shorter film than La La Land. It's only about an hour and a half long, which is good. So short film, and I have to say I was incredibly impressed by it. I can't think of any movie musical, anything in that genre that compares to it at all.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll talk about what's so impressive about it. But the other thing that really struck me is that it's not just like, I feel like people got this wrong when back in 2016, early 2017, when they were talking about La La Land being like, oh, it's like kind of an imitation of a style. No, it's not an imitation of a style of Umbrellas. It is Umbrellas, but worse. My opinion of La La Land has kind of slowly diminished with time. And it took a big hit after watching this film. And that's not to like diminish La La Land, as I still think it's a good film, and the music is really great for what it is. So still a very, very good film, but it is so much of an imitation of Umbrellas in a lot of ways, but it doesn't capture what makes Umbrellas so good. Okay, so what exactly is Umbrellas? That's kind of the main question. Okay, so we can just say that in general, it has the same general plot as La La Land. So if you know the plot of La La Land, you basically know the plot of Umbrellas, except that it's not about art. And yes, it is. Is it the most obvious plot from like scene number 1? Yes, but that's actually. I mean, it doesn't hurt this film at all. Normally, if I know like everything that's going to happen from the first 5 minutes of the film, is less enjoyable to me. But this is definitely an exception to that. in some ways the plot isn't the most important thing. So just in general, it's about this girl who is, it's unclear how old she is. Her mother says, you're only 16, you can't get married. And she says, I'm 17. So we're going to assume that she's 17 because she says she's 17. And her name is, Genevieve, I guess is how they pronounce it in the film. But Genevieve, I suppose. I'm not going to, try not to offend anyone, again, with my French pronunciation. And this 20-year-old named Guy. And he works at a auto mechanic shop, and he has not done his military service. This is at the point where I guess France is drafting all men at some, for fighting somewhere in Africa. I don't really know the exact history. They don't really, because the film was made very close to the time that it's set in, so they don't really comment on that too much. I guess they assume that the audience knows what they're referring to. And he lives with his godmother who's raised him his whole life, and she's slowly dying. She's being cared for by this young lady named Madeline. Okay, so issue number one with La La Land is that the director, Hurwitz, he apparently tried to make this. No, Hurwitz is the composer. Damien Chazelle.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Damien Chazelle is the they worked on all the same. They worked on this project together, composer and director. Chazelle, his senior thesis film at Harvard was as was described at the time. Of course, I've not seen it, but it was described as basically La La Land in slightly smaller form, about a jazz trumpet player instead of a jazz pianist and an aspiring actress. And it was called Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench, which means nothing except that those are the two of the big characters in Umbrellas.
So it's pretty on the nose, if you ask me.
Yeah. That would be like, I don't know, if you're making a science fiction film as a student, and would your professor Irving have allowed you to make a short science fiction film, call it like Luke and Leia?
Yeah, that might get a certain amount of tension in a negative way.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, so right away we know that La La Land is very indebted to this. So in the film, essentially, Guy and Genevieve fall in love, and then he gets drafted. He has to go off to fight, and they end up the night before he leaves. She ends up getting pregnant. He leaves, and she doesn't get many responses from him while he's away, even though she's pledged her undying love and told him that she is going to wait for him no matter what, and that she is pregnant with their child. And she at this meantime is courted by this guy who is actually, so Umbrellas is part of a trilogy of movie musicals by the same director, and the first one is not scored by Michel Legrand. Umbrellas and the next one, The Young Girls of Rochefort, they're both Legrand. So I don't know anything about the first one, Lola, except that the guy who ends up courting Genevieve actually references the fact that he was in love with Lola. So these films are all tangentially related to each other. So I don't know anything more about that. But he ends up proposing to her, and she feels like she has to accept in some way because, one, she's in a compromised position, being pregnant with no husband, and she lives with her mother, and their umbrella shop is in financial ruin, and this guy's very wealthy. He's a diamond trader, and he's a nice cultured guy who's very in love with her and accepts her, and so she accepts his offer to get married, although it's not entirely clear how happy she is about it. Guy comes back very shortly because he'd been injured and released from service, and he finds that Genevieve is married and left, and he kind of doesn't know what to do with his life. His godmother dies. He gets kicked out of his job, and through, I guess, this person who cared for his godmother, Madeline, kind of helps him get him back on his feet, and they end up falling in love and getting married and having a very nice family life. And then the last scene is he has built his own American-style gas station, and he's playing with his little child. And I guess it's 5 years later, and Genevieve and her daughter stop by, and at the gas station, there's a nice, an interesting kind of final scene. So that's the film. Okay, I probably just ruined everything about the film if you haven't seen it, but if you know La La Land, it's probably already ruined for you anyway.
I was going to say that last scene sounds like the literal reverse genders of what happens at the end of La La Land.
Oh, well, I'm gonna talk about that in a second, but okay. So musically, so it's obviously plot-wise, so like the externals are a little bit different. And one of the main differences, and I think one of the reasons why Umbrellas is better, is that there are more characters. La La Land has 2 characters. Yeah. Just the 2 of them. Whereas this is a lot of dialogue, relationship between Genevieve and her mother, and Guy and his godmother, and Guy and Madeline. So there's a lot, and then also, of course, the jewel trader whose name I'm forgetting, who Roland is his name. Roland and Genevieve, and Roland and Genevieve's mother. Lots more relationships. Right, they give depth to the characters. We have a much better sense of why they do what they do and what they're feeling and what pressures are being placed upon them. It also starts a little bit differently. Like, it's right from the beginning, Guy and Madeline are in love. We don't know how they met, but that's just presented to us that they're in love with each other, and thereafter we know what happens and why.
That's interesting, because
La La Land.
In La La Land, like a good portion of the movie is them coming to know each other and falling in love. So that's an interesting difference.
Yes, yeah. So that's it. That's the departure. But I think La La Land is a little bit less convincing in that regard, because we really, we can see some of the external problems, like why the characters, drift apart, but what we don't really see is we see them, at the beginning, they're not together, but it's not, to me, entirely clear why they get together. That's a little bit odd to me, or unclear. That's one of my biggest issues with the film. I'm not really sure how they end up together. Yeah. So it's one thing if you, like with Umbrellas, they start together, that's just how it is, and thereafter we know everything that happens and why. And then, again, it has depth because we can see what the characters think in their conversations to other characters and what other influences there are other than just their love for each other. Yeah. Okay. But musically, what does it mean that it's people describe Umbrellas as kind of an unusual musical, and it is definitely not an American movie musical. And what that means is, and I don't know if any other countries do this, but it's entirely sung. Interesting. Music, singing all the way through. Every line is sung. Now, it's kind of, when they're mostly, dialogue stuff instead of more song-like things, it's what we call recitative, or kind of sing speech. So it's not part of a composed musical. I mean, obviously it's composed, but it's not part of an identifiable number. It just kind of flows I'm singing this line that I'm saying right now, kind of thing like that. Okay. So it's entirely sung in that regard, which probably made it a very difficult film to do in 1964.
Yeah, there was no kidding.
Yeah. So it was entirely recorded, all of the music and all the singing beforehand with different actors, because the actors couldn't sing. So different people singing, and then the actors lip synced it on set.
That's impressive.
It seems really impressive for an hour and a half long film. I probably couldn't tell because I don't know French, but I'm sure it's done pretty well for French speakers. So very difficult to put together, I'm sure. But also in contrast to the standard American movie musical, there really aren't any big numbers to it. There are moments where it's more like this is an identifiable song, and it had a couple of big hits. I think the biggest one being English titled "I Will Wait for You." I think that was a kind of minor hit at the time. So there are identifiable musical moments. Like this is an actual identifiable song. But there are very few of them. And they're really not set off from the rest of the texture because, one, they're singing all the time. They're singing, the dialogue, singing, speech, leads right into it. And also, in contrast to the American movie musical, there's no dancing.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. So musical moments are not very, just kind of, or if singing is just in the rules of this world, if singing is just how everyone is all the time, then, the big songs are just kind of organic outflows of that, like more emotional speech in a way. So that's kind of the rules of this style of movie musical. The American movie musical, very different from that. It's a lot of, when they're not singing, they're talking. You know that it's a song, right? They occur at predictable parts of the plot. They advance the plot in particular ways. They're very obvious. They're only very catchy tunes. Normally there's a lot of choreography involved with them, especially, at that time period. And again, that's fine. That's just the rules of that kind of musical world. Okay, you don't question why some people do. I've seen people, I think we even had one of maybe our very first responding to Reddit, someone complained about musicals being unrealistic as people start singing. I don't buy that because the whole point is that's the rules of the road. It's just how it is. You just have to accept that is the universe that they live in. La La Land kind of fails in this. So I think La La Land is kind of a failed American movie musical. And I don't know whether that's because it's trying too hard to stick to umbrellas. So La La Land, it has some song numbers that are lots of choreography, and they are there to advance the plot in some way. But what's wrong with them? Well, they are all concentrated in the first 15 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing. There's acting and dialogue.
Yep.
And then at the very end, we get, the audition song. All right, and then what's her name? Mia goes off and becomes an actress. And that's it. There are two other musical numbers that, again, kind of cross the boundary between life and music, which is, I guess, when the planetarium scene with the Griffith Observatory, they kind of dance and rise into the stars in a kind of strange manner. And then at the scene at the end where they meet up again and we kind of see what could have been in their life if they had stayed together.
Yeah. So
in that sense, though, to me, the film it sets up the rules as, we have a very kind of American style. This is where it's paying homage to something like another kind of Paris-inspired or French-inspired film, An American in Paris, which is one of the quintessential American movie musicals. So the opening is kind of inspired by that. Opening first 15 minutes, first act, I suppose, them meeting and falling in love, and also comments on art and all those songs, and comments on what it's like to be in LA. I suppose that's the first song, Another Day of Sun. But then, so we understand that it's just an organic part of the world where people just break into song and dance, and then they don't do it for the majority of the film. And then it happens again. Yep. Only one other time. One, I think it would be very hard to turn this La La Land into an actual stage musical. because
True.
where are the songs? And also, where are the other characters? Yeah, so, and then you have music that, like, also acts in that weird way, too. Like, they literally, like, in the planetarium, they, like, look at each other, they hear this music, they start dancing, and then they're in the sky, literally dancing. All right?
This is true.
And to me, that's like, what are our musical rules? Why isn't all the music like that? Why then at the end is the music like, that's very strange too, you know, like we literally see the musicians playing, I think it's Wayne Bergeron playing the trumpet solo in the last, you know, big musical what if scene. So to me, the rules are not clear. It no longer makes sense to have like an actual song, like the audition song. Why, you know, you need to spread these things out.
Yeah.
So I don't know, to me La La Land's kind of a failed movie musical, and that doesn't mean it's a failed film, although I find it to be very derivative in a lot of other ways of umbrellas. Like just literally the colors of umbrellas are like absolutely the inspiration for all the colors of La La Land.
Yeah, as we
Absolutely.
were talking about before the show, if you're watching on video right now, if you're looking at the live tile right there, that yellow dress is, I mean, that picture is from the promotional picture. I think that's the cover of Umbrella's film, and I mean, I think you can already like, you know,
Yeah.
understand the color, the vibrancy, and particularly the obvious yellow dress
Yeah.
that appears in the La La Land, you know, promotional, you know, work as well. The yellow sundress looking thing. So yeah,
Mhm. There are so many other elements too that are shared. Just like so, one of the things about umbrellas is that it tells you every month you get a little like a title card. So you know, like January, whatever the year is, 1958, February 1958. La La Land doesn't give you as many of those, but it does give you, you know, it's like summer, fall, winter. Um, Other not so, you know, not so subtle things. They meet again. The title card 5 years later, same on both films. I mean, I don't think that's unintentional.
yeah, no, seriously.
Also, a lot of the underscore for La La Land is very light and kind of in Legrand's world. Not exactly the same, but in a kind of like lighter French world and not in the American jazzier idiom that the big numbers are, which is a little strange. I mean, obviously when there's diegetic music, like they go to the jazz bar and people are playing, it's jazz. But the rest of it is kind of this lighter world. Even like the planetarium scene is kind of more like what Legrand is writing in Umbrellas. A little bit richer strings from Legrand, which I like. You really can't get away with that, like you know, wall to wall, that kind of string writing anymore. And it kind of would feel out of place in an American movie today, but works very well in Umbrellas. So just a few other points. The end. I think the end of Umbrellas is far better. Number one, both people end up happy in some sense. So what you get the impression from the last scene that Genevieve has a little bit of regret that she, you know, didn't wait, especially when she sees how happy Guy is with his family. So you get the impression she's a little bit, you know, but not to you know, extent. You don't feel bad for her.
Right.
Whereas I kind of feel bad for Mia, that's her name, right, from La La Land, Mia and Sebastian, right? You
Yeah.
kind of feel bad for her because she like gets her artistic dream, I suppose, but she seems to be married to this very like one-dimensional piece of cardboard. I don't know if that was intentional, but that's how the guy comes off.
Okay, but that was at the era of cinema when like there were a lot of main characters that were literally just blank. and I don't understand. I don't know if I don't know if we're still in this era. To be honest, we might be if I went to the theater and watched a random film, but honestly, from the mid 2010s, maybe even early 2010s, and maybe up until now, we get a ton of main characters, by and large female, oddly enough. But but you know, there are some male characters like this as well, who are just literally blank. Like they're just not people. They have no depth, you know. And I now that I think about it, I think definitely, the dude in La La Land is definitely in that category.
It's unfortunate too because Umbrellas gives us the initial relationship and then the relationships that everyone ends up with as well. It gives us that story, which I think is nice. You feel sympathy for both characters, and you kind of understand how they arrive where they do and why. Right? We don't see exactly how Mia and Sebastian get to where they are in La La Land.
Yeah.
Of course, obvious parallel. He sets up his own jazz bar instead of the American gas station, but same thing. Of course, he doesn't. I guess he feels happy in the end that he's got his jazz bar. I guess, but the last song kind of leaves you hanging. You're like, well, they're happy with what they have, but also like they're also have this 9-minute song with her imagining what could have happened if they'd been together. So are they actually better off? Whereas with Umbrellas, you definitely feel like there's no scene where they imagine what could have happened. We just kind of get like they meet each other, kind of look at each other, and then go back to being happy with their families.
Yeah.
So obviously there are possibilities there. The Genevieve, when Guy asks how their daughter technically is doing, and she says, oh, she reminds me of you. There's something there, but we're not like presented all these fantasies in their heads.
Yeah.
So I personally like that a lot more. And then the main thing though for me between them is that Umbrellas is just such a sweet and innocent film. No, it's not like a innocent like in a totally morally like this is a G-rated film for a 5-year-old.
Right.
It's not. There are some implications about certain kind of behavior, but it has this air of innocence to it from the start. They are in love. They just kind of sing for a long time, I love you so much, in very different, varied ways, very musical ways. But that's it just has this sense of like youthful innocence, all these bright colors. That never changes, but colors are always bright. It ends up pretty much happily. The music stays in the same kind of happy, light world the whole way.
Yeah.
And La La Land doesn't, to me. It feels like it's imitating something of this, but not capturing what makes Umbrellas great. It doesn't have that innocence. I get mad at both of the characters at various points. I might disagree with the characters in Umbrellas, but I don't get mad at them. I'm not frustrated with them. Though it tries to have the colors, it's just a grittier film. And it brings in all of these questions about pursuing one's artistic dreams versus relationships, which that's too complicated for Umbrellas.
Yeah.
It's a simple, straightforward, innocent film. It just feels like springtime in visual format.
Well, Damien has with Whiplash shown that he's really troubled over this career thing. I think,
To be fair, LA is a grittier city than Cherbourg, at least from the parts of Cherbourg that you see in the film. Yeah, I don't know. And like I said, it sets up rules and then it doesn't abide by them. Whereas Umbrellas is very consistent with its rules. You may not like them if you are a huge fan of the American movie musical, but it stays within its rules. In La La Land, I don't know, sets of rules, sets of other rules, and then who knows? So
Yeah.
heavily indebted to Umbrella's, but it just, to me, it just doesn't rise to Umbrella's level in any way. I do think the songs are fantastic in La La Land. Music overall is fantastic. I don't know. It just, in its imitation, it just doesn't capture like the best parts of Umbrellas.
Yeah, like I mean, you said it was one of the best musicals that you've seen. Did I catch that right
Oh, yeah,
at the
definitely.
beginning?
I think it's the best movie musical I've seen.
That's a pretty big statement.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very different than something like, well, okay, it's probably around, tied with Fiddler on the Roof. Very different than Fiddler on the Roof. Very different than something like Sound of Music, or I don't know, other good movie musicals that I like. Music Man is just kind of a fun one. My Fair Lady.
Mm.
Very different than those. I actually haven't seen American in Paris, although I know the, well, obviously I know the music for it, but it's actually an important film in that it kind of not only reestablished Gershwin's reputation, but brought some of his lesser known songs, turned them into standards. So very important. And obviously that's another film that you have to think about when you talk about La La Land, because that is like the quintessential American jazz musical. But that may influence like the rules that La La Land then breaks. But in its essence, La La Land, I think, is Umbrellas in an American Los Angeles, Hollywood loving, or Hollywood at least discussing manner.
Right. Yeah. I will say, from my experience watching La La Land a long time ago, it did feel very. It did feel like the movie just stopped trying to be a musical, like kind of arbitrarily. In fact, it happens kind of. I mean, it kind of happens smoothly, which is why by the time you get to the end of the film, or like, when's the next time you get music after after the beginning section? What was it again?
Yeah, so I think literally the song is like so we get the song when they're like looking over this, city skyline, city
Oh, right.
lights, where they haven't even, that's like, the point of that is to progress like their relationship, to like consider each other, I guess.
Hmm.
Then we get like the planetarium number, but other than that, there's no singing until the audition.
Yeah, I feel like every time music came back from like the beginning slew of music, it felt like, oh yeah, this is a musical. I forgot that I'm watching a musical. That's interesting. I think the part about La La Land that is the most compelling to me is the visuals, because like if I think, oh, and also the story structure is somewhat interesting. Although in reflection and retrospect, I don't think I'm as interested in it as I was like when I first watched it. It holds its first act for a long period of time, and it's compelling through that entire period of time just off of one emotion, pretty much, which I find interesting. But yeah, I would say also that my opinions kind of like trailed a little bit over time. Definitely at the time it was a big film.
Well, if you like the visuals of La La Land, then I think you will enjoy the slightly more, not grainy, but you probably know the better filmic word than I do, but more like actual film
Yeah,
qualities of the colors of Umbrellas.
yeah, for sure. I'm sure I would. I freaking love film. I'm obsessed with how film looks. It's something else. Yeah, and with the same director, with Whiplash. Whiplash is basically a copy of Black Swan. It's like the same exact film. Now, that's a little bit different because that story structure of the obsessed artist is kind of archetypal in a way. So it's not like Black Swan is completely original in that sense, but like it's like almost exactly like Black Swan, just swap ballerina for a drummer and make it a lot less remove like the magic realism like here or there that happens in Black Swan. Not even magic realism, like I guess introspective moments of Black Swan. I will say though, with Whiplash, I actually liked it better than Black Swan. I actually liked it a lot better than Black Swan, which is interesting. I think it's interesting that these two movies are basically copies. Now I'm wondering about the rest of his filmography.
I mean, what else has he done other than First Man?
Yeah, he's done First Man. Isn't he directing like some Marvel film? Like that hasn't come out yet. I don't know. That seems the thing to do these days. Let me see. Oh yeah, I forgot. Oh, he was a writer though. He didn't direct it, unless he also directed it. But 10 Cloverfield Lane. No, he did not direct it. I don't think this movie was. Oh, okay. Has okay reviews. But yeah, so he hasn't been he hasn't been trying to make a movie as often as he can. It seems. So it's interesting. But the movies that he has made, I wouldn't be surprised if First Man turns out to be a copy of something else. And First Man, if it's not a copy of something else, that's his by far least critically acclaimed film. People didn't really like that film, so if he did come up with that originally, that's kind of a that shows a little bit of a pattern that's unfavorable. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like Ben said, that's on Criterion, and Criterion Collection is still on sale on Barnes and Noble. I wish I feel like I'm advertising for them, but I don't have a promotion link, and I don't get any money from promoting it. But yeah, if you want to get a half off, I'm sure it's on Barnes and Noble as well as the rest of the collection.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy this. It's $20. Like, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Why not own it? Exactly.
I'm definitely gonna rewatch it. So, as well. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Cool. Is that it for topic?
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Cool. Yeah, that was fun.